You can spend your entire life praying, reciting Bible verses, attending church, and still die poor, frustrated, and afraid. Harsh? Yes. But this is the truth that few have the courage to say out loud. Psalm 23 is not just poetry. It is a map to mental, emotional, and spiritual power. And today, I, Napoleon Hill, will show you why this ancient scripture, when truly understood, can be the ultimate code to transform your mind, your financial life, your decisions, and your legacy. So let me ask you now, are you ready to stop merely repeating words and finally begin to live their power? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. How many times have you heard these words? How many times have you repeated them? Maybe mechanically, maybe with hope, maybe in despair. But now, pause for a moment and listen to me. Because when I say, I shall not want, I'm not merely quoting a verse. I'm entering a mental state, a formula for deep reprogramming, an ancient and powerful code known by kings, sages, and all those who understood that true wealth begins first on the inside. For decades, I studied and interviewed the most successful men in the world. They weren't just rich, they were convinced. Not because they had money in their pockets, but because they had certainty in their hearts. Each one of them, without exception, firmly believed that faith was a practical force, not just a religious abstraction. And when I read Psalm 23 for the first time from that perspective, I realized this isn't just a prayer. This is a mechanism for transformation. Look at what the psalmist declares right from the start. The Lord is my shepherd. That's identity. Knowing who leads, who guides, who provides. And immediately after comes the direct consequence. I shall not want. He doesn't say, I hope I'll have enough, or maybe I won't lack. He states it with emotional certainty, with spiritual and mental alignment. I shall not want. That, my friend, is what I call a dominant conviction in the subconscious mind. Maybe you think it sounds beautiful, but distant. Maybe your reality is filled with lack, unpaid bills, an empty fridge, and anxious thoughts. But listen to me carefully now. The kind of faith that transforms is not the one that waits to see in order to believe. It's the one that chooses to believe until the invisible becomes visible. You can repeat this verse 1,000 times. But if deep inside you're still clinging to fear, doubt, scarcity, nothing will change. The mind must be convinced emotionally first, before reality begins to follow. That is the pillar that separates dreamers from doers. Have you ever noticed how often you say things like, money's tight, life's too hard, nothing ever works out for me? Every time you say that, you are programming your brain to believe it. You are feeding a kind of faith that creates lack. Now imagine waking up every morning, looking at yourself in the mirror, even with a growling stomach, even with debt piling up, and saying, I shall not want. Not as someone begging, but as someone declaring. Because that statement, when repeated with emotion, with persistence, with faith, begins to penetrate the deepest layers of your mind and alter the frequency of your energy. Yes, you emit a frequency. And what you emit you attract. I lived this. In the year 1919, after turning down offers that would have compromised my integrity, I was with my family. No money, no home, no hope. And yet, something inside me kept whispering, I shall not want. That conviction kept me writing. It kept me believing in the mission. And years later, it led me to publish Think and Grow Rich, which would help millions around the world change their relationship with wealth. But let's go deeper. Why is it so hard to believe that we will not lack anything? Because we were raised to think that abundance is an exception, that money is dirty, and that asking for too much is selfish. We were programmed for scarcity, not for faith. Society planted fear in our minds, and it grew, disguised as caution. And so most people live like this. Faith on Sunday, fear on Monday. They dream big at night, but wake up small in the morning. They talk about God, but live as if they're alone. That internal disconnect is what keeps reality from changing. The Bible says, "Faith comes by hearing." So what have you been hearing every day? Crisis news? Complaining voices? Your own defeated thoughts? Or truths that lift you, heal you, transform you? Reprogramming the mind doesn't happen by accident. It is a discipline. I taught it through the concept of emotional autosuggestion, repeating truths with emotional intensity until they become your dominant belief. And if you think this is just spiritual talk, know this: modern neuroscience confirms it. Intentional repetition reshapes the brain's neural pathways. The brain believes what it hears often and with strong emotion, regardless of whether it's objectively true. So when you boldly say, "I shall not want," even if everything around you says otherwise, you are sending a powerful command to your mind. I trust. I continue. I grow. Asterisk, asterisk. And at that very moment, the unseen starts to move. The secret I discovered, and that was already hidden within the psalm, is this: success belongs to those who act in spite of doubt. The faith that moves is the faith that persists. Asterisk, asterisk. Do you want true abundance? Then start by deciding what you truly believe in. Because there is no harvest without planting new beliefs. There are no miracles without a renewed mind. Now, I offer you a challenge. For 7 days. Every morning when you wake up, and every night before you sleep. Close your eyes, and repeat with as much emotion as you can asterisk, "I shall not want." Even if you cry, even if your mind tells you it's a lie, keep going. Make this phrase your seed. As I've said so many times, whatever the human mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. I shall not want. Say it now, but not as someone merely repeating a phrase. Say it as someone who has decided not to live in scarcity anymore. That sentence could be the beginning of a new life. And that life starts now. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. When you hear these words, what comes to mind? A green field under the sunlight? A peace that feels out of reach? Or maybe just another beautiful verse? What few realize is that these well-known phrases hide one of the most powerful secrets of true prosperity: inner rest. But don't get me wrong, rest is not the absence of effort. It has nothing to do with laziness, inertia, or escape. I'm talking about a kind of peace that comes before action, the kind of peace that separates those who act with purpose from those who act out of desperation. Think about it. The whole world is running after more money, more recognition, more answers. But how many people are running without really knowing where they're going? Most people live in a constant state of urgency. They wake up late, make rushed decisions, eat quickly, react impulsively. The day becomes a battlefield. And at night, as they lie down, their mind is still loud, full of what-ifs, comparisons, guilt, frustration. What many call productivity is often just accumulated exhaustion. I myself fell into that cycle for a while. After launching my first book, I dove into commitments, meetings, deadlines, and travel. The excitement of achievement blinded me. I started working more and thinking less. Until one day, my wife looked at me and said, "You're here, but it feels like you're already gone." It hit me like a punch. I realized my mind had been hijacked by speed. And worse, I was producing a lot but creating very little. That's when I understood and practiced what the psalm meant. The path to abundance doesn't go through anxiety, but through direction. Look how the psalmist writes, "He makes me lie down in green pastures." That's intentional. That's spiritual. He isn't being forced to rest. He's being led to stop. Not because there's nothing left to do, but because there is something more important: alignment, a strategic pause. Because even the most fertile soil needs rest to bloom again. Through my years of studying high performers, I noticed something. The most productive people weren't the busiest. They were the calmest. They knew when to speed up, but more importantly, they knew when to stop and think. Clarity was their foundation. One of them once told me something I never forgot. I don't make important decisions when I'm tired. And that changed the way I think. Have you noticed this? Those who accomplish great things are almost always calm. They speak little but with precision. They walk slowly but with direction. They don't react impulsively. They choose how to act. And that's only possible when the soul is at peace. So why don't most people live this way? Because we've been trained to believe that being busy means being important. That the fuller our schedule is, the more valuable we are. But that's a trap. The truth is, busyness is not productivity. Movement is not progress. That's why the psalm continues, "He leads me beside still waters." Notice the gentleness of that image. It's not running. It's not shouting. It's not forced. It's gentle. Can you feel the contrast? While the world pushes, the Creator guides. And only those who allow themselves to be silent can hear Him. How many opportunities have you missed because your mind was too noisy? How many wrong decisions have you made because you didn't know how to wait? How many times have you ignored your intuition because you were too distracted by what others were doing? Clarity is the soil where right decisions grow. Peace is the channel through which the most powerful ideas flow. And this isn't just a beautiful philosophy, it's science. Studies from Harvard University show that people who regularly practice silence, meditation, and reflection have higher levels of creativity, emotional intelligence, and precise decision-making. Now stop and think. What would your green pastures be today? What would your still waters be? Maybe a project that brings more meaning, not just profit. Maybe fewer useless commitments and more time with your family. Or maybe just the freedom to make decisions calmly, without the weight of comparison or urgency. But if your mind is always agitated, you'll never access those answers. Because hurry blinds. Noise confuses. And anxiety makes you believe you have to run now or lose everything. That's a subtle but paralyzing lie. I remember a young woman who once wrote to me. She said, "Napoleon, I work 14 hours a day, I have 3 jobs, but I still feel like my life isn't moving forward." When I asked her if she knew why she was doing all that, she started to cry. She didn't know. She was just surviving. Like thousands, maybe millions, do every day. If you're at that point, pay attention. True progress isn't born from chaos. It's born from awareness. A guided life is a life with pauses. Pauses that don't delay, they accelerate. Pauses that don't stop you, they realign you. So I invite you right now to stop for 2 minutes. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. And say, "Lead me beside still waters." Say it with faith. Say it like someone who knows they need direction more than speed. And if this practice brings you relief, if it starts to bring clarity to your thoughts, turn it into a habit. Start your day with silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of surrender. Because when the soul rests, the mind clears. And when the mind clears, the decisions are right. And when the decisions are right, prosperity comes. Not like someone chasing it, but like someone gently led to still waters. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. This isn't just a declaration of faith. It's a mental posture. An internal code that separates those who live under fear from those who walk through the darkness with eyes fixed on the promise. It's not about naive optimism or feel-good phrases. It's about reality. Because the truth is this, the valley exists. Sooner or later, we all pass through it. And what determines whether we cross or collapse halfway is how we choose to interpret that valley. Through all the years I've studied the greatest achievers in history, I saw that none of them reached the top without going through dark seasons. Many lost everything. Many were betrayed, rejected, ridiculed. There were those who faced illness, bankruptcy, and tragedy. And there were others, perhaps like you right now, who went through periods of complete inner darkness, emptiness, doubt, pain. I was one of them. Once, after a series of rejections and the collapse of one of my most promising projects, I found myself sitting on the edge of a bed, feeling like I had failed as a man, as a father, as a husband, and as a writer. I saw no way out. Everything inside me was screaming to give up. But in the middle of that cold silence, a sentence echoed in my mind like a powerful whisper. Even in the valley, I keep moving forward. I didn't say it to convince myself. I said it because I needed to decide. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting while trembling. It's walking without guarantees. It's believing that the valley is a stretch of the road, not the final destination. When the psalmist says, "I will fear no evil," he's not claiming that evil doesn't exist. He's saying that he made a decision not to fear. And that changes everything. Because fear will always be present. But the one who chooses to face it, instead of hiding from it, activates a kind of power few people know, faith in motion. That's the kind of faith I saw in Henry Ford, who failed more than 5 times before founding his car company. That's the kind of faith I saw in Thomas Edison, who failed over 1,000 times before making the light bulb work. That's the kind of faith that drove Walt Disney, even after dozens of rejections. In every one of those stories, there was a valley, but there was also conviction, a presence, "You are with me." Do you feel that presence? Because it's what holds the soul when everything seems to be falling apart. It's what reminds us that shadows only exist where there is light. The valley of the shadow of death, not death itself, but its shadow. That means something greater stands behind it, casting hope where fear wants to paint an end. Most people, when they face the valley, retreat, freeze, bury dreams, let projects die, watch relationships fall apart, let callings fade. Why? Because they were taught to fear. They were programmed to avoid risk. They grew up hearing, "Don't dream too big, that's dangerous. What if it goes wrong?" And so they learned to live chained to the zone of safety. But too much safety also imprisons. It suffocates. It kills. In my book Think and Grow Rich, I wrote that the greatest thieves of dreams in the history of humanity are the 6 basic fears. The fear of poverty, of criticism, of illness, of loss, of old age, and of death. These fears hide in the subconscious and shape our actions without us realizing it. People say, "I'm just being cautious." But in truth, they're being guided by a disguised fear. And if that's your case, let me ask you an honest question. How many times have you stopped in the middle of a promising idea because you were afraid to fail? How many times have you avoided trying something new because you feared criticism, rejection, or losing the little you have? How many times have you postponed a legitimate dream, not because it was impossible, but because the valley seemed too dark? That's exactly where Psalm 23 becomes a manual for crossing. It doesn't tell you to avoid the valley. It says you can walk through it without being overcome by it. And for that, you need awareness. Awareness that you are not alone. Awareness that fear is just a tool, not a master. And awareness that faith, when practiced through action, has the power to move mountains, starting with the mountain of doubt inside you. According to the American Psychological Association, around 85% of our fears never actually happen. That means most people suffer in advance. They freeze in front of ghosts that never take form. That is the destructive power of a mind without direction. And that's why this verse is so necessary. It repositions us. It reminds us, "You are with me." And that is enough. When I decided not to give up, even in my personal valley, and I kept writing, even without knowing if anyone would ever read my words, it was because I held on to this certainty. The process has purpose. Even if I can't see it now, I trust it. And that same trust is what I want to ignite within you today. Not so you ignore the pain, but so you don't bow to it. Not so you pretend everything is okay, but so you can declare, with steady faith, even in the valley, I keep moving forward. And if this is your moment of crossing, if you're in the valley right now, listening to this with a heavy heart, then stop and say this out loud. I am not alone. Because maybe what you're missing today isn't more certainty, but more courage. Maybe you don't need more evidence, but more presence. Maybe this isn't the time to understand, but simply to keep going. And if the only thing you can do right now is take one step, then take it. Because small steps of faith are greater than large steps in fear. While fear paralyzes, faith, even trembling, leads you to the other side. You weren't made to die in the valley. You were made to cross it, and to live the promise that comes after. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord for many long days. This verse is not a conclusion. It is a seal. A quiet reminder that those who choose to walk by faith don't finish the journey in the valley, or stuck in doubt, or submerged in fear. They finish surrounded by presence, by purpose, and by legacy. And maybe that's the most misunderstood part of all of Psalm 23. Because many think prosperity is something you achieve. But true prosperity is something that follows you. Goodness and mercy are not random events, not peaks of blessing, not luck. They are the result of a life guided by a higher principle. That's what I discovered when I deeply studied the greatest achievers in history. The ones who were remembered, who left lasting marks, who touched generations, weren't necessarily the richest. They were the most consistent. For years I heard people say, I want to get rich. But very few ever said, I want to leave a legacy. And that is the difference between those who live chasing things and those who let things follow them. Between those who live to accumulate and those who live to overflow. I've always taught that true success is not a place you reach. It is a way of living. It is a state of awareness that transforms how you relate to time, to money, to people, and most importantly, to yourself. It is the moment when you stop being just a consumer of experiences and become a creator of paths. And the psalm makes this clear. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me. Notice the choice of words, shall follow me. They are not things you chase after. They are things that chase you when you walk with the right heart, with an aligned mindset, with firm steps in faith. And not for just one day, nor for a season, but for all the days of my life. Now think with me, what kind of person do you want to be remembered as? Someone who accumulated possessions? Someone who balanced the books? Or someone who, wherever they went, left a trail of kindness, wisdom, and presence? Because you can live your whole life making money and still be poor in spirit. But no one who plants value leaves this life without bearing fruit. That's the difference between wealth and legacy. Wealth is what you have. Legacy is what you give. It's what remains after you're gone. And the question that followed me every day as I wrote Think and Grow Rich was, will this transform someone I'll never meet? That's what kept me writing when no one believed. That's what sustained me on the days when there were no applause and no response. Because I knew that what I was planting would keep growing even after I was no longer here. And maybe you think you have no influence, no audience, that you're not an example to anyone. But the truth is, your life is always preaching something. To your children, to your friends, to your coworkers, to those who watch you silently. And here's a truth that might make you uncomfortable. The world doesn't need more successful people. It needs more guided people. People who choose to live by principles, not just by goals. People who think beyond their bank account. People who understand that prosperity without purpose becomes vanity. Over time, I've learned that there's a kind of wealth money can never buy. The wealth of sleeping with a peaceful conscience. The wealth of knowing your life inspired someone not to give up. The wealth of seeing your family secure, not because you left them money, but because you left them values. And look at the final verse. I will dwell in the house of the Lord for a long time. This is not just a future promise. It's a state of being. It's the confidence of someone who knows where they belong. Someone who lives with peace even in unstable times. Someone who doesn't bow to trends, to comparisons, or to external pressure. Because when you live in the house of the Lord and understand, this house is built of faith, truth, and vision, you no longer need to run. You are carried. Science today confirms, people who live with a clear sense of purpose have higher levels of well-being, mental health, and longevity. They live longer. They live better. Because when you have a strong why, you can endure anyhow. And that's why the ending of Psalm 23 is so powerful. It doesn't point to something far away. It points to the here and now, to the kind of life you choose to build, to the kind of influence you desire to have, to the kind of footprint you leave wherever you go. Today, you can choose to live one more day like all the others, running, striving, spending energy chasing what you think will make you happy. Or you can choose to walk with the certainty that what follows you is greater than what you're chasing. And if these words made sense to you, then say it out loud, write it down, declare it with faith. My legacy will be greater than my ambition. This sentence is not the end. It's a new beginning. Because those who understand Psalm 23 don't live just for themselves. They live to transform. They live to leave a mark. They live with a mindset of abundance and a heart set on eternity. And that is true prosperity. If this psalm teaches us anything, more than anything else, it is that true prosperity begins in the mind, matures in trust, and blossoms in legacy. You don't need to chase after what you already have the power to attract. When you decide to live with active faith, clear purpose, and courage to walk through life's valleys, goodness and mercy will begin to follow you naturally. That is the most powerful point of this journey. It's not about having more, it's about becoming more. And if this message spoke to you, then the next step is inevitable. A new video is now appearing on your screen, and it will take you one step higher, to a deeper level of understanding. A new key, a new 1% of growth. Watch it now. Thank you for being here with me today, and I'll see you in the next video. Let's keep growing together.